Hi, I'm Jan and welcome to this video on how to create a nice and simple registration and login form for your site. And in fact, it is this page that we will be creating. Now, I've already have done a series on forms, which you can find in the description below, as well as the card showing up right about now. But this video is about making a form that fits within the style of your website, which is this one here, the Into the Wild one. Now, we are actually going to be doing this over 3 different parts. Today's session, we are going to be focusing on the actual form fields themselves, the background image, and this little divider. Let's get into it. So, time for some standard housekeeping before we start. If you want to skip this, feel free to do so. There should be a number coming up on your screen telling you where to jump to in the video, or you can just check the description below for the chapter links. So if you didn't already know, this video is part of the Into the Wild Easy Build series. If you haven't watched the other videos, it might be a good idea to do so, and the link for the series should be showing up right about now. If you are completely new to this channel but want to have the same setup as me, then please look at the Getting Started series, which should also be showing up round about now, and that will sort you out with things such as the web server, and in fact my entire suite of pen drive applications that I've cobbled together for you. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. You didn't hurt my feelings, and I've still got your back. The resources that you need to follow along with for this video are in the descriptions below, which, if you are new here, it is going to be the site files, which include all of the images as well. If you have followed along and have done the last video, then you only need a new tiger image that we can see in the background. If you want to use the original file, then please use the unthrashed link. If you want to use the WebP version, then just follow the site file link in the description and you'll find that file separate there for you. As always, again, if you don't want to be messing about with PHP, there will be a HTML file for you to work with. And finally, this video won't go into huge detail about the form elements, since this is covered in the form series of videos, which you should see in the link in the corner about now. So the page that we're going to create is based on the forms that we made in Figma all that time ago, which is the one we can see on the screen here. That is assuming that I haven't redone this series since the time of recording this and by the time you've watched this video, but you know, can't have everything. So this page is fairly straightforward. We have 2 forms side by side, and it has roughly the minimum amount of data required for our forms. Now this background image, which I thought looked quite nice, does actually cause some issues, and we'll be looking at all of the solutions for this image in this video. As a side note, we also have to remember, with all the privacy laws out there and the legal implications if data is lost, stolen or compromised, that we do need to minimize the amount of data we hold on our users. And we also have to ask ourselves, do we really need this data? So on the registration side of the form over here, do we really need the first and last name? Since in this site they may not be buying anything straight away when they register, the first and last name isn't really required, but it can be handy for personalization on the website, as well as sending emails as proof that the emails are coming from us. So we're going to keep it for those reasons, but in truth, we could get away without even having the first and last name here. So time to start coding. So this is our HTML setup so far, or website setup. As you can see, we have our PHP pages on the left hand side, and we don't actually have a login page. So we need to create that login page, as well as creating a CSS file for it as well. So we do that by opening up the base page and resaving it. And login, there we go. We're going to go into CSS and create a file called forms. And of course we have to link the two. Our next stage is obviously to create the form element. So we're just going to do the registration form first. So if you're planning on using Emmet, this would be the code that you'd use to create the initial form tag. And of course we're going to press enter here to create some space internally. We are using the method post because obviously we're sending sensitive information, and so the post method helps to hide that. The next thing we're going to do is to add the label input pair. So this is a code we're going to be using for the label and input pair. There is a bit of a weird relationship because the label does require the for tag, okay, which matches up with the name and ID of the input element. So we do kind of break our class rule here, but this is important for when we're doing JavaScript and the PHP at a later date. As you'll notice, the label has a class of form label and the input field has a class of form input. You can see its first name and then the name and ID are reg first here. The reason why we're using reg here instead of form like we're doing in the classes is simply because we want to be able to make sure we can distinguish between our registration fields and our login fields since we're on the same page. Now, to save some time for later on, even though we're not actually going to be dealing with the help system in this video, we're actually going to add in the help system text though. So we're just going to add that in now. So this is the code that we need. We start off with the div here with a class of form help and the question mark. And also inside this div, we have another div with a class of form info, which contains the actual hint text for the user. It may look a bit messy, but trust me, this will help us a lot later on. Finally, notice the BR here at the end. This is just a help to keep our forms nicely formatted. With regard to the information in the form hint, you can put as much or as little in here as you wish, although I do recommend you have at least 2 lines. So if you watch any of my videos in the past, you know I like doing little challenges, and this is one of those mini challenge times. And the question is, can you do the rest of the input fields and help systems for this particular form? Now, don't just say no, give it a go. So here is some help that you might need in order to do it. Number 1, just follow the layout code that you can see we've got here. That's all you're really doing. You're just repeating it. Remember that we are only doing the input fields at this point. So we're only looking at you doing the last name, email, password, and confirm password fields. All of the code you need to write will be in between these 2 form tags. You do not need to create a new form tag for each element label pair that you'll be making. And most importantly, don't be afraid about getting it wrong. Don't worry about it. This is how we learn. We learn by failing, working out what we've done wrong, and then getting it right the next time. So I recommend you pause this video because I'm going to give you the answer in 3, 2, 1. Now, and how well did you do? It was a large batch of code. So if you didn't get it all correct, don't worry. But let me know in the comments below how well you did and what you thought was the trickiest part. Okay, now there's quite a bit of code here, so I'm just going to explain a few bits. So first thing to note is, as I said before, even though this is a lot of code, it's actually really just the same code repeated 4 times with just some minor tweaks, such as the actual help that you're given in these hints. Now, one of the things you may not have known if you haven't done forms before is that with the email, it is of type email and not text. The same can be said for the passwords. These are type password, okay, not text. By putting in password, you actually create those dots rather than people seeing the text. The other thing that's quite important to do with the password is making sure that even though they're the same type password, that they still have unique IDs and names for the JavaScript and PHP to deal with later on. With regards to your hints, obviously you can change them to whatever the rules are required for your own site. So the next bit now is to add the 2 checkboxes as well as the submit button. This is the code that we need here. It is a fairly standard affair with the class names following the same as before. One important thing to notice is that we do have specific modifiers for the label, and we also have an actual link here in part of the label text. Okay, and this is always a good idea when you're telling people that they agree to the terms and conditions, that you actually allow them to be able to view the terms and conditions. Notice we don't have any code hints for these because these are checkboxes, and if they need help with checkboxes, we have some real issues. So let's see what this page looks like. When you open the site up in Laragon or whatever web server application you're using, it will automatically go to the home page because that is called index. So don't forget to click on the login button in the navigation to navigate to it. And then what we see is, well, let's be honest, it most definitely isn't the prettiest form you've ever seen in your life. So just a few pointers. First of all, the hints here are really messing things up for us. It's spreading things out quite a lot. Horizontally speaking, the input fields are all over the place. It doesn't look very nice at all. This extra line on the label for confirmed password isn't very desirable either. And actually, I think personally that having a checkbox on the left-hand side for a checkbox and text looks a lot better. So this is a quick thing. Let's do that now. So this is what it should look like. One thing I will point out is make sure that you remembered to move the BR to after the label and not keep it next to the checkbox. And although this is also a small change, let's see what it's done. So a quick save, bring up the form, refresh. And I still think that makes a huge difference even on its own. However, to deal with the rest, let's dive into the CSS. So the very first thing we want to do in our form CSS is to get rid of the help data just for the moment. And the way we do that is that we take the parent of it, which is form help, as we can see here. Okay, remember, it's all encapsulated into that form help. And we set it to display none. This will do two things. First of all, it'll make it invisible. Secondly, it will remove it from the document flow. So a quick save and a view. A refresh. And you may need to do a Control F5 to full set. And you can see how it all disappears. This now gives us the ability to start working on our form properly and start making it look nice. Now I like sorting out the labels first on the left hand side because that helps to align the input fields on the right hand side. So these labels need to be an inline block so that they can have a fixed width, which allows them to right align them, give them a font size, add some color, some standard margin bits and information, and put in a margin just for a little bit of separation from the actual input fields. So again, a quick save and a view. So again, this alone has made quite a major difference. However, as we can see, this confirm password bit does look a bit squiffy. We'll come back to that in a little bit, but we can definitely see that the checkbox text looks very bad. Now remember, it has a modifier, so we can sort that out quite quickly on our own. The checkbox text doesn't look very good at all and it's causing a lot of issues, but remember it does have its own class so we can fix it on its own. So this is the code we're using to fix our label. As you can see, it's just a simple left aligning of the text and a much wider width given to it. Okay, 30 rem, which works out at 300 pixels. So again, another quick save and a view on it. So okay, that looks better. It's definitely not perfect and we are going to do some more work on it in a moment, but that's enough for us to start looking with the input fields, because normally speaking, once we get the input fields sorted out, quite often these things sort themselves out in the wash, as they say. So let's sort out the input fields. So here's the code for our input field. Now most of this should be standard for you right about now. One part that may be a bit unusual is this one here on the background color. Essentially, we are setting the background color here to fully transparent. We're using the RGBA mode. It seems to be the most successful way of doing this. And so the first three numbers represents the red, green and blue channels. And the third value represents the opacity, with 1 being fully opaque and 0 being entirely transparent. So with this done, another save and a view later. And here we can see it has made an absolutely huge difference. Okay, by giving these a set width and a separation, we're suddenly seeing the form getting very close to what we saw in Figma, which is this here. And we can see it's also helped out with the checkbox text as well. However, we do have this big gap on our checkbox and it can be a bit weird trying to work out what's happened. So if we use the F12 tools and go into the elements and we go down And we can see here that on the checkbox, the size of our checkbox now, even though it's a square, because checkboxes are constrained to squares, we can see it's actually taken up the same 300 pixels that the normal input fields have been given. So obviously we need to fix that. So this is a code that we needed. We can see we just set it back to 3 RAM and just giving it a nice left and right margin to position it nicely within the page. So with this done, let's see what it looks like. So we can see this is looking very good, with the exception now of the actual link to the terms and conditions. So we need to be looking at clearing this up. Now, again, I'm going to break the rules a bit here because I want this to be yellow, even though it's not part of my color code, but that's what we're going to do. So let's implement that. So as a break from the norm, we're actually going to put this rule into the base CSS, simply because this is going to become a highlight color, as we've got here, or like a contrast color, which we're going to want to use on other pages of the website, and therefore it belongs within the base. But then we also need to write the rule to apply to that actual text. So here we are. You can see this again has been put into the base CSS, because again, it's going to be a rule that's going to be applied across multiple pages. And so it's the class of .links. So this is for links within the normal document. That's not on the navigation bar. We're going to set the text decoration to none so we don't get that underline. And we've got the highlight color being added there. So let's save that and see what it looks like. And here we can see it, and I personally think it looks a lot better. If you disagree, that's fine. Just go with any value that you desire. Now it's time to do the button, as it's sitting here on its own, looking a bit sorry for itself. Now let's remind ourselves of what it should look like. It is essentially a rectangle with a transparent background, with a white border, and the text using the same title font as these here. And we want to have the text centered within it and have the button itself roughly center in with the form. So let's go and create that code. So the code that you see here should now be quite straightforward. Defining the font family, the background color, the border, the color of the text, a width, height, a left-hand margin, try and center it. And then we have this new little bit, the cursor pointer, which just makes sure that the cursor turns into the hand when the mouse rolls over it. So again, quick save and view. And there we see it, and we can see how the pointer changes to the hand as it comes over the button. So for now, the registration form is basically done and dusted, and it's time to move on to the login form. And once again, this is another good time for you to flex your mental muscles and see if you can write the HTML code on your own. So as before, some of the things that you'll need to know. The method for the form will still be post like it was for the registration page. We want to give the form itself a class of form and form _log for the modifier. We want to give the email a name and ID of log email. Just go here. So this email field should have a ID and name of log _email, but a class of form input. The password here should have a name and ID of log pass, but a class of form input. We're going to give our login button here a class of form login. And there is no help system required for the login section. So pause the video now, as the solution code will be on your screen in 3, 2, 1. So hopefully you've done this correct. Important thing to note that this form should be outside of the registration form, obviously. And as you can see, it is the same layout and setup as the registration form, but without the help system, and of course a lot fewer fields. So let's save it and see how it looks. We can see it's actually almost formatted correctly. Yep, it's in the wrong spot. It should be over here, and we'll sort that out later. But the biggest misdemeanor, I would say, is the login button. Okay, we want it to look much more like the register one. And what we'll do is what we've done in previous videos, which is to hijack a existing rule, in this case, the registration button itself. So here we have the form button. As you can see, all we've done is to add the form login rule to the statement. And again, a quick save and view. And you can see we've got our login looking correct. Now what we need to do is start positioning the two forms because we don't want them up and down, we want them left and right. So here's the rule set that we need. As you can see, I've put it at the top of the form CSS page. We've just given a margin top of 20 rem, margin bottom of 5, inline block, and a vertical line of top to make sure that the two forms actually start in the same place. So cheeky save and view later. And we can see this is getting very close to what we actually want over here. Now what we want to do is to move the form down a bit. And as you remember, the login form does have its own unique class, so we can use that to drop it down a bit. And to get some separation, we're going to increase the width from the form reg as well. And here's the code that we need, these two rules here. Nice and simple. And again, what does that do to our page? Well, we can see it's looking extremely close to what we wanted in our initial design. Now, our original design, you can see we have this vertical line here in the middle, as well as the faded out picture of our tiger in the background. Now, both of these things, one would think would be very straightforward. Unfortunately, they aren't. Can be a little bit of a doozy to sort out. So let's start hitting them head on. Let's deal with this line first. So there are 4 ways that we can actually create this line. And the first way is my preferred method, as it is very simple CSS. And that is simply we add a border, a right hand only border to our form reg, which is what I've done here. So a quick save and a view later. So here we are, we just do a refresh and it's not working. So let's just find out why this isn't working. Let's do F12. Let's just jump through here so we can actually see the rules being applied. And we can see the form rule, but we don't see the form reg rule being applied. And yep, here you can see I actually put the classing wrong. I called it from reg rather than form reg. So let's just quickly fix that. I don't know if you made the same mistake. Let's go up here. Where is it? So up here, not from reg, it should be form reg. So again, another save, jump over, a refresh, and there is our line. Trouble is, this line is too darn long. Okay, I don't want it as long as this. I don't like it coming down here. I want it a little bit shorter. So we scrap that idea, although it is a very good one to use. So solution number 2, or attempt number 2, is to add an empty div with a class of line, and we're going to put it above the first form. Okay, so this is the code that we need. Then we jump into the CSS. So here we are in the CSS, you can see I've put this at the top, and this is the rule that we need to add here. And likewise, I have removed that code that we had, the right hand border in the form reg. So save and a view later. And this works absolutely fine. But I find it annoying that I've had to add an additional piece of HTML to my page to create a simple graphic. And I don't like that. Version 3 would actually be to create this as a graphic and then again using the same rules of CSS to place it in there. But to me, that's even worse than just doing version 2. Because now we're adding additional file size and additional downloads to our page, and so that's also very bad. The final solution is what I personally consider an advanced piece of CSS, and that is using CSS to dynamically create an element using the pseudo class after. Now, I do have this on my list of 4,192 videos that I still need to make, and if I have made it, then there might even be a link showing up on this screen right about now, although I'll be honest, I doubt it at the moment. Now this technique that we're going to use is the one that a lot of designers will use in order to create the hamburger menu system that we often see in mobile devices. So this is what the code looks like. The important thing to note here is this content. Whenever you're doing a before or after pseudo class, you must have a content attribute. It can absolutely be empty as you see here, but you must have it regardless. The rest of the code, as you can see here, is nigh on, if not completely identical to the code that we use for the line div. And so if we save this and view it, we can see it is exactly the same. And we've got exactly where we want to. So that's why we're going to keep it. Now what we're going to do here is also just quickly dive into the actual code so we can see what happened. And what you'll notice is this little bit here where it is the after. So notice that it is still within the form element itself, but there is our after class that has been injected. So now it's time to try and deal with that annoying background image. Again, this is something that I think most people think would be nice and easy to do using absolutely simple CSS. And to be fair, you would be right if we'd done our job properly first. So let us have a look at the ways. So route one would be actually to take the image that we've got, knock it into our favorite graphics application, apply a transparent filter to it, with a green overlay, save it, export it back to your page, and then apply it as a background image to your wrapper, and that would be great. Job will be done, no issues, sorted. But in our case, we have to pretend, or I'm pretending, we don't have access to that. So we're trying to find a HTML and CSS version for this. So version number 2 is, it would make sense to still add this image as a background image. Apply it to the wrapper, and then apply a transparent filter to it, because there are filters that we can use in CSS. And that sounds like a great idea, but guess what? At least at the time of recording, and much to the dismay of so many web designers out there, this isn't possible. I have tried it, I have checked it, and it just isn't in the specs. There is no way to apply a transparent filter to a background image. But wait, there is an opacity setting for those of you that's done some research. And the answer is yeah, but no. And the reason is the opacity setting won't just affect the image of the wrapper, but all of the children within it. So we end up making the entire page transparent, or at least semi-transparent. So then we have route 3, which is a workaround for the broken route 2. We add, yeah, you've guessed it, a new element into the page above the form. And we could give it a class of BK for background. So let's actually do this one. So here's our brand new class called BK, okay, or div with a class of BK. And then what we need to do is all the magic stuff in the CSS. So this is the main part of the BK code. You see we're using a position absolute. This is a trick basically to make sure that it fits the entire container that it's in. We set up our background image. Now we resize our image to 165%. That is just what I need to do with this particular image. Obviously, mileage on your images will vary. And I've reset the position. And I've set a Z index of -2 just to make sure that the image sits below everything else on the page. If you've not come across Z indexes before, it is a bit like the layers you have on your graphics applications. With a higher Z index means it's on top of the ones with a lower Z index. So giving this a value of -2, just make sure it's below all of the other form elements. So we save this and then view it. And this is the image that we have so far. Remember, because it is within the wrapper, it doesn't extend throughout the entire page. Okay, and like I said, I already got the numbers right, so I knew it'd be positioned exactly where it should be. Our next trick now is to apply a filter onto it in order for it to go semi-transparent. This is the line of code that we need. So this is the code that we need to use. Now I'm very surprised in 2021 that we still have to use the WebKit prefix. This basically means that it's not yet standard within the browsers, and it might even be slightly buggy. As time moves on, we'll be able to get rid of the WebKit and just use mask image. I have tried it without the WebKit, and at the moment, not a single browser will recognize it, but with the WebKit on it, they all do. Okay, so what we're doing here is that we're applying a radial gradient. Okay, the type we're using is a circle, because you can also have an ellipse. And then we've got the position of 50% horizontal, 60% vertical. And then we're using this color here, which, as you can see, is a roughly 25% transparency of the site color. Okay, and it's happening from 30% from the center of the circle. Okay, so from 0 to 30% circle, it's going to be this color, and then it's going to gradient out to this color, which is the same one, but with 0 transparency at 80% from the center of the circle. So we're going to do full transparency. And so then we save that and we view it. And as you can see, it is extremely close to what we expect to get. So compare it against Figma and you can see, there's only minor differences between them. Now we do get this, what looks like a rather hard bottom and top border. And that is really because of the navigation bar, and navigation bars at the top, we haven't pushed it down. And again, we've used a radial one. So even if we did bring it down, it would still give us the effect of a hard horizontal border there. But I think that's worth sacrificing. If you want more information on image masks, it is again on my list of 4,192 videos that I plan to do. I don't really have 4,192, but it sounds like a good number. So please do look out on the channel. If I've got enough cards left, there may well be a card in the corner once I've done that video. Okay, so that was route 3. What is route 4? Well, as you may have guessed already, route 4 is using the pseudo after class again. Okay, because, well, why not? It reduces the amount of HTML elements we have to create, which makes it better for the website. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to basically apply this to the wrapper. But first, obviously, we need to remove it from the HTML. So we'll just delete that from there. And then because of, say, the work is basically the same, all we really need to do is to change this class name to the wrapper and after. And of course, add that empty content. As you can see, the rest of the code stays the same. So it saves us a little bit of work. And of course, we can go back and we can double check it. And we can see it is exactly the same. So now we have almost completed the page. Okay, there's just a few things left to do. As we talked about before, we've got the help system that we want to add in to help guide the users to fill the form in correctly. And although we have done some customizations on these checkboxes here, I would like it more personalized. And those will be in the next 2 videos. And then finally, we're going to be doing the JavaScript validation, which is a whole new series on its own, which means my job here is done. So thank you for staying with me all the way. As always, if there is a video you want me to do, or if you want a shout out in one of the future videos, or you want to ask me anything, or just say hi, please want that in the comment section, as I do honestly read every comment, at least at the moment, because I don't get many and I'm very lonely. So I'll see you guys next time. I'm Zen, signing off.